Hey, I'm Philip Winchester, and you're watching Movies, Games, and Tech.
Philip, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Philip Winchester, and I play Peter Stone on the new show Chicago Justice.
So tell us a little bit about Chicago Justice for those people who don't know anything about it.
Chicago Justice is the fourth installment of the Chicago franchise in America. It consists of Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago PD, and now us. We are the fourth leg of the table, as Dick Wolf says. And essentially it follows the... It follows a legal team who are prosecuting challenging cases in the Chicago area, Cook County area, and trying to, do the right thing.
Tell us a little bit about your character.
So I play Peter Stone, who is the son of Ben Stone from the original Law and Order franchise. And Peter's complicated because the shadow of his father is always over him in the courtroom, in his personal life. He left New York to go to Chicago to do his own thing. And yet what his father did and the legacy of his father in New York is always there, and it's always kind of pressing into him. And so that's a strained relationship at the best of times. And yet he practices law in the way that he thinks needs to be done. It's pretty black and white to him. If you break the law, you should be held accountable. And that's Peter Stone. And yet I think that in that sort of, he's so complicit to do that, he has a soft spot for the victim, and sometimes goes too far in trying to protect them.
And what interested you about this particular role?
This is, I had been doing action for years, 7 years or something before this, and so this is entirely different. I actually sat down with Dick Wolf. He invited me up to his place, and he wanted to talk about this role, and I said, look, I don't know if I'm your guy, man. And he said, I don't know if you're my guy either. And so we had to talk about it, and we were really honest and open with each other. And Dick very openly just said to me, he said, look, why don't we give it a shot? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I thought, well, I'm never going to get an offer like that again. That's incredible. He's Dick Wolf. He is the godfather of television. I'm getting an opportunity to do something on one of his shows. It was really a no-brainer. I had to say yes.
And as you mentioned action shows, obviously people are going to recognize you from Strike Back.
Yeah.
They might be a little bit confused with the accent.
Yeah, it does. So it comes and goes. So obviously Michael Stonebridge was British. He was SAS. Peter Stone he's from New York. He lives in Chicago. And so my background is I'm English and American. My mother's English. My father's American. I trained at Lambda. I lived out here for about 7 years. And so I was telling you earlier, I get off the plane and there's something inside of me that I think I'm afraid that if I don't use it, I'll lose it. And at drama school, we were taught that if you didn't have a decent British accent, you would never work. So I think I'm always just kind of afraid of losing it. So I get off the plane and I'm like, okay, I have to be English again. And I really don't think about it. My wife calls me out. She says, you got off the plane and the first thing you did was just you had an English accent. So yeah, I think it's odd. And I love England, and I think it's my second home, and I think we'd like to live out here again one day, my wife and I, my daughter, and so we'll see. But it's funny. I hear it and it just instantly draws me into it.
So let's talk a little bit more about Strike Back.
Yeah, go on.
7 years.
Yeah.
Very popular show. When you first started, did you think it was going to go like that?
No, it's like anything. You're just glad to be working, and you go, you call your friends and say, yeah, I got a job and it's this and it's great. And I was excited about this script because Stonebridge was so complicated, and we got to do ridiculously fun things. And I didn't quite know how much fun it was going to be. So the first few episodes of the show, I think Sully and I kept looking at each other, going, can you believe this? Can you believe we're getting away with this? And we were shooting in South Africa and Budapest and Thailand. I mean, there were no rules. They just let us loose. And there was a team, there was like a core of us who really understood what the show was. And I think essentially HBO and Sky just turned around and said, look, just make sure it's kind of within the boundaries of what's on the page, but do what you do. And I don't think that happens very often. And the show was frenetic, and it was mad, and it was some of the best time of my life, because it was just, there were really no rules. You learn your lines, but then within that, you can kind of do whatever you want. They're rebooting it now, right? So there's this real part of me that feels like, oh gosh, I'm so thankful for this job, and yet I can see this thing that we started. And I'm gutted to be missing it. Maybe a cameo with Sully, we'll see. But I think, I met up with some of the actors and I said, you guys are going to have the time of your life. It's the best thing in the world.
Were you a little disappointed that he seemed to get all the women and the only 2 women you had pretty much died?
Yeah, no, yeah. I was upset that the women I had died. I wasn't upset at all. I think, as an actor, as a bloke, I think the worst thing in the world to do is a love scene. They are so unnatural and horrible, and I'm just not good at them either. I'm just convinced. Like I want the director to be like, right, left hand here, right hand there, and because I just feel like, and I'm happily married and I got a beautiful little girl, and I'm just constantly thinking, my wife says, so what are you going to do at work today? And I'm like, well, I just hate him. I hate him. So I was grateful that Sully got to do that, and I think he rather enjoyed it. So he can have him.
It looked like he did.
I think he did. Yeah, I think he did.
Did you do much training for the role?
Yeah, we did a ton of training. We had I worked with a guy who basically was Michael Stonebridge. He was SBS. And later on we worked with some Marines out in Thailand who had friends, who were SEALs and things like that. We never trained with SEALs, but we met some and kind of told stories. I think the best thing for me was to be allowed very graciously into their world. I think the thing that Sully and I said that we agreed upon was, if we can make it look like they do, then we win. Like, that's all we wanted to do. And so the whole goal was to be as true to being an operator as possible. And I think we did as best as we could. And I hope that for these new guys and gals, that they can get out there and just make it look amazing, because that's the trick, And that they do amazing things, and and then when you get them together and drink a few pints of Guinness, they tell amazing stories as well.
And finally, why should people watch Chicago Justice?
Look, Chicago Justice is tackling really hot button issues. Some of our first episodes deal with self-radicalization, racism within the Chicago Police Department, which, I think the show does take place. Clearly, the show takes place in Chicago, and yet it's a mirror. It's holding up a mirror to the world and what's happening in this world. The world is interesting right now, to say the least. Politics are sort of off the radar, and our show is touching on all those things. So, tune in and sort of, see if we make the right choices.
Philip, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.